All right. So welcome, everyone. My name is Jessica Ragno. I am a clinical social worker, the Associate Clinical Director at Mightier. And if you've been to a webinar with me before, thank you. Welcome back. I really enjoy doing these. Today, our topic is really centered around caregiver well-being, caregiver mental health. Again, if you've been to one of these before, you know that we always center something around, okay, how is a child doing? What is the skill we are trying to help a child build? We build a lot of things off of our skill packs and talk through how those work. This will be a bit similar to that, but we are focusing specifically on tools for your mental health. And I'm also going to talk about a study we just recently conducted and share those findings. All right, so that is sort of our agenda for today. I'm going to talk you through our Caregiver Stress, Wellbeing and Work Impact study. This is something we ran through the year of 2023 with Mightier families. So if you had opted into doing some additional assessments and research for our science team, you may have been a participant in this study. I'm going to take you through the key findings from that. I'm going to go through some cognitive behavioral therapy-based emotional awareness exercises for parents and talk you through why we're doing them and how you can use them. And those are the specific things I'm going to share with you afterwards. So some tools for you. And then I am going to share the heartbeat skill pack. Some of you may have already received this skill pack. It sort of depends on when you've signed up for Mightier, but the content of it really connects to the parent tools that I have put together for you. All right, so let's get into our study findings. So this is just a quick overview. The Caregiver Stress, Wellbeing and Work Impact study was conducted throughout the year of 2023, but it really depended on when you signed up for Mightier. So parents got a baseline assessment that you took before your child started playing Mightier, and then a follow-up assessment, so many of the same questions after 12 weeks of being in the program. So not all of these kids actually played Mightier for those 12 weeks. There might have been gaps in that, but everything that is sort of like a post-assessment or at the 12-week mark just means that your family was with Mightier, had been with Mightier for 12 weeks. There were 379 caregivers who completed that baseline assessment prior to their child playing Mightier. I do think we had some folks who had done it like right after their child had started playing, so we can't use that data for this. 88% of those caregivers were mothers. I'm just calling that out because we're going to talk about parent mental health in this and sort of like how caring for your child's emotional well-being, your child's mental health impacts your mental health in various ways, impacts your career, the quality of work. We had a lot of questions about work. And then again, in general, just your own engagement in like various elements of your own life. But I do want to just call out like 88% of our participants were mothers. So there's a story there just about like the trade-offs and choices that caregivers and also mothers specifically often are making for their children. Okay, so let's get into the findings. And I will also preface this with, these are a lot of things we know. It's nice to attach numbers to this because I believe this is a really powerful story about how connected a child's mental health and a parent's mental health are in terms of how they impact one another, but also, and you know this as a caregiver, that like the trade-offs, the choices that you make in order to support your child are significant, right? Like those are really powerful things. And those are sometimes trade-offs and choices you would make over and over again, right? Because your child is your priority, their well-being is your priority. But it really tells a story of what caregivers are doing and how they are impacted in various ways as a result. So first, we're going to focus on career choices. So this first finding this is just a baseline finding, really highlighted that when kids struggle, oftentimes parents are altering their careers. So at baseline, 69% of participants reported that their child's behavioral or mental health has negatively impacted their career in some way. The only people who got this question had said that they were currently employed. So there is some missing information here that I really wish we had that would account for parents who maybe aren't currently employed or weren't currently employed at the time of this, but like that employment decision had to do with their child's mental health. So we are missing that information in this. And then we got at the specifics, like, so what does that mean? Like impact to your career. So what parents told us is that, 42% did not seek career advancement because of some element of their child's mental health or having to care for their child's mental health. 32% reduced their overall hours at work. 11% took a less than ideal job. 8% left a job entirely. Again, this is only folks who are currently employed, so it does not account for folks who had already left a job. And then some other element of career impact. 50% said there has been another piece that is not accounted for in these details. So this is really significant, and also like, we know this, right? Like these are choices sometimes that are just the reality of what you're doing to care for your child and to appropriately meet their needs. The next finding was about like quality and engagement at work. This is self-report also, just as a reminder. So like, this is not an employer saying that and reporting on how an employee is doing. This is like you as an employee saying how caring for your child's mental health, worrying about your child, like how that is impacting you at work. So specifically, we asked about interruption to your work days. So like having to like take a call, leave early for some reason, pick your child up for school, things like that. Distraction at work. This could just be you are worried, and it is hard to be cognitively present when you are worried about your child. Or impact on quality of work. So again, this piece of how is your actual like output, your actual work output, and the quality of that impacted, or how do you believe it's impacted by some element of caring for your child's mental health, worrying about your child's mental health, having to like make some trade-offs during the workday in order to support your child. So at base, everything you see here in yellow is the baseline percentage of impact. And then everything in green is the 12-week mark of playing Mightier. So at baseline, 72% of parents said that supporting their child's mental health has led to an interruption to their workday in the past month. So this is, again, all just like thinking about the past month of time. At 12 weeks of Mightier, that number had dropped to 55% reporting an interruption to their workday in the past month. Distraction at work, at baseline, 83% said that in the past month, they have felt distracted at work because of worrying about their child's well-being, thinking about it. And then at 12 weeks, that number had dropped to 62%. And then impact on quality. So 60% of caregivers at baseline said that their work quality has been negatively impacted in some way. And then that number again dropped to 36% at 12 weeks of Mightier. And this is a really powerful finding, I think, and it highlights the fact that there's no emotional boundary between work and home. Like you don't stop loving, caring, worrying about your child, like all the things that you're thinking about all the time, like they don't leave your mind when you go to work, and that has an impact. That has a real impact on your workday and for your life. And then the last one that has to do with work was days missed. So for simplicity, like this is broken down into like in the past month, 0 to 1 days missed, specifically to care for your child's emotional or behavioral well-being, or 2 or more days missed. The actual options were 0, 1, 2, 3, like all the way up to 10 plus. So in that 2 plus, section, there are some parents who are saying, I missed 3 days. I missed 3 days in the past month. I missed 7 days in the past month. It gets too complicated to look at on, when we put all of those numbers in. So we've just broken it down into like 0 or to 1 days missed or 2 or more days missed. So again, before Mightier, 64% of parents were saying, I didn't miss any days, or I only missed 1 day to support my child. 36% said it was 2 or more days. And those percentages shifted to 85% missing 0 to 1 days, or 15% missing 2 or more days at the 12-week mark. And this could mean there could be various reasons for days missed, right? It could be your child couldn't go to school that day. You had to stay home. You had to call out. It could be about appointments. It could be just the idea of taking a mental health day. Like, we needed that. I needed that. My child needed that. Things like that. There could be a variety of reasons for why a caregiver had to miss work to support their child. And then the next two really have to do just with caregiver mental health and overall well-being. So at baseline, 83% of caregivers reported that their engagement in like valued activities or relationships has been impacted by their child's mental or behavioral health. Think about sort of how stress or worry or frustration impacts the activities you do or don't engage with, or the priorities, how you prioritize things, or just how satisfied and happy you feel in general with your life. So 83% said that yes, there is a connection there and there's an impact that is happening for me. This was a past month one as well. And then by the 12-week follow-up, that number had dropped by 23%. So some improvement there, specifically around like, we can assume that like when kids are feeling better, are doing better, through their Mightier play, their emotional regulation is improving. That is why, like those improvements are happening, which I'll get at. We can make that correlation, and I'll get at that on the next slide. The specific details here, the questions were about physical health, relationships, happiness, mental health, how you like rate your mental health, engagement in valued activities, and then overall life satisfaction. I see a question coming in. I'm just going to look, but I might hold questions till the end. Yes, I agree with this question. If you do a follow-up study, it would be interesting to break out these stats for parents who work from home versus work outside the home. Oh, that is, that is, I don't think we asked that in this. I'm going to check with the rest of our team. I don't think we asked that question, but yes, I agree. I totally agree. That would be really important. Okay, and then this last piece gets back at what I was just alluding to. So we've seen this before, that when a child's emotional regulation improves, so like when you as a parent say like, yes, my child is making these gains, parents also rate improvements in their own stress. So like their level of stress decreases. So in this specific study, 84% of parents reported that their child's emotional regulation improved after using Mightier. And then those same caregivers reported significantly less parenting stress. This is something that makes sense, right? Like when your child is emotionally dysregulated, having a hard time, the reality is like that is hard, that is stressful, that is frustrating. That's a pretty tough situation, and that leads to stress in general and specifically around parenting. So those are our findings. For us, there's a piece here that is a story here that's really about how employers take care of their employees, and sort of thinking about like, okay, for an employer, if you truly care about how your employee is doing, and the logistical things of like, they can come to work and they are engaged in work. We can't those solutions, what we offer our employees can't just be about their own mental health. Like it can, like that's great. That is really important. That's wonderful. But also their child's mental health and well-being is so attached to their mental health and well-being and has such an impact on their work. So we have to think about this as like the full picture of a family, how a family is doing, and support a whole family there. So those are the findings. And then I'm just going to check if there's one other question. Oh, no, that's the same one. Okay. So next I'm going to go through, so if you're a Mightier family, you know that like everything we do is so centered. It's centered around like a child's needs. What skill do we want a child to be building, and how do we help them build that skill at home through play? How do we make it engaging? And how do we allow you to be a part of that, right? How do we give you these activities that like you and your child together can explore your emotions, build these coping skills, have like a meaningful conversation about like a tough situation in a way that's like very approachable. And we center it on the child first, but we really try to bring the parent into all of that so that ideally like you're learning something about each other, you're learning something about your child for sure, but also you're learning something about yourself as well. But again, the starting place is always kids for that. So what I would like to start doing is building out more tools and resources that are just for parents, really focused on your mental health, your well-being, giving you some tools that won't be as fun as the kid ones, but really allow you a chance to like practice some self-reflection, emotional awareness, really break down, okay, how are my emotions and my thoughts and behaviors impacting my life in general, and what can I do about that? Things that like largely I might do in therapy with someone, but like let's break it down into like worksheets and like things that are very approachable. Give you the enough background and education on it so that like you can approach this with yourself and just kind of like build some skills along the way. So what I'm going to share now is our starting point for that. The first element has to do with like identifying and understanding that connection between emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and the impact on your life. Some emotional awareness building tools that I'll show you. And then I have like a 7-day reframe challenge to share. And then I have sort of centered these around matching one of our skill packs for kids. If you've gotten our heartbeat skill pack, that is a very foundational skill pack. Like, how do I understand my emotions in connection to my heart rate? That is how I've sort of like approached these activities for you as well. So I will share the kid version after this as well. Okay, so if we like think back to what we just saw in those study findings, especially that image with like the balloons, where you can sort of see that there's real life when a parent is worried about their child, when a parent is stressed, that has real life impact, right? So there are sort of layers to this that I'm going to talk through. And then I have a sheet that I will share that lets you explore this for yourself and sort of like pick it apart a bit. If you've done one of these webinars before, I will speak every single time about cognitive behavioral therapy and this cognitive behavioral therapy triangle. This is a loose triangle right now, but the concept here is that our emotions, our thoughts, our physiological response, so like what your heart rate, your muscle tension, your breathing, and our behaviors and choices, all of those things are connected and they all impact one another. And understanding those connections is really important, because when it comes time to, like, if we want to change how we feel or the intensity of how angry we feel about something or how stressed we feel about something and how that's impacting us in various ways, we only have certain access points. Like, we can't just change our emotional state. We can't just say like, be happy, don't be stressed, feel calm. Like that doesn't work. But what we can do is we can approach everything through our thoughts. We can reframe our thoughts, right? We can identify negative thoughts, reframe our thoughts. We can go at it through like physiological approaches. We can take deep breaths. We can do physical relaxation strategies, progressive muscle relaxation, right? To calm our body, our physiological response, and in turn, our emotional state. And we can go at it through like behaviors and choices. If we're feeling sad, isolated, and we are isolating, we aren't connecting with people, and we are stuck in this cycle of not doing things to like promote our own health or mental health, like we can behaviorally, we can change that. We can we can help try to get ourselves out of that through the actions, the behaviors, the choices we make, right? So like those are our access points. The other layer here is that, and this is where, again, it's going to connect back to what we went through in those study findings is, all right, let's understand this, right? Let's just awareness building right now. Like, let's figure out, okay, how are my different emotions impacting my thoughts, my body, my behaviors, and how are they now impacting my life? When I am stressed, what happens? And then what choices do I make around my physical health? Or how is my physical health impacted by my stress? How are my relationships impacted by my stress, right? Relationships with my child and how I interact with my child, how I interact with my spouse, whether or not I reach out to friends, things like that. Your mental health, do you prioritize that or not? And what happens to your mental health? Engagement in valued activities, and then work, right? And there's so much that goes into that sort of like layer of life outside of like this triangle. And it's really important to start identifying that, because in identifying it, we can start to have some power over and start to see the patterns and the connections. So this is on one of the tools that I'm going to provide you, just to give you a space to start working on these things if you're interested. The next piece, this is very actually connected to what we just talked about, but again, it's getting to know your reds. So if you know that in Mightier, like we use the red zone and the blue zone as a language for kids to kind of talk about when your heart rate is up and you're experiencing an emotion intensely, right? Anger or excitement, that's your red zone, right? Your heart is beating fast and you're in your red zone. And when you're calm and you're relaxed, you're in your blue zone. So with kids, and that's the things on the right side here that are very colorful, these are some activities from our Heartbeat skill pack that you're going to get. And these are activities for kids to sort of help them figure out, okay, what puts me in my red zone? What does my red zone feel like? What situations or emotions put me in my red zone or my blue zone? And these are things you can do with your child to play around with, like, is this different for me than it is for you? Open up some conversation around that and help your child to build some like emotional awareness around just how their heart rate changes based on how the emotions they feel and what they're doing. The sheet on the left is a similar process. It is the very boring worksheet version of this for adults that just has you like map out a situation, an emotion you felt, how your body felt, how you behaved, how it impacted your thoughts, right? Just making those connections, carrying that line through to sort of see like, okay, yes, I can see how each emotional state can impact me, like full circle. And then there is a prompt here to try to like also do it for your child, not have them do this, but like from what you know about your child, sort of like play it out as if you were them, to just gain a little bit of perspective on like, oh, okay, I'm noticing that when my child feels angry, I can tell because like this is how their body, what I can see in terms of how their body is acting and how the behaviors they're taking or how they tend to think about things. Just to put you in a place where like you feel like you can better support your child because of being a little better able to understand what's happening for them in these moments. This next one is under the red. If you've seen our under the sea creatures, it's the same idea as like the anger iceberg, basically, that like with any emotion, but we're going to focus on red zone emotions. With any emotion, there are a lot of other emotions tucked underneath and like mixed into that. Anger is never just about anger. Sadness is usually not just about sadness. There are other emotions, more complicated emotions, emotions that probably make us feel a bit more vulnerable, that we are also experiencing alongside that. So what you see on the right is the kid version of this. And then on the left is sort of the adult, like lead into, okay, when you feel any difficult emotion, a red zone emotion, what is underneath that? What else are you feeling at the same time? And why are you feeling this way? So this starts to get a little bit at like, can we do a little bit of digging? When you felt angry about this thing, was it also mixed with a bit of like embarrassment about something or disappointment? Or were your expectations not met? And then why? Was it because like I had my heart set on something, or I feel like someone let me down, or I feel like I can't trust this person because of how they responded to me in this situation, right? So like going a few layers deeper and trying to figure out like what's underneath this and why did I have this emotion in the first place, or these emotions in the first place. And then to start noticing patterns. Because oftentimes there are patterns, like we can, and through those patterns, we can start to notice like, wow, I really, this sort of thing matters a lot to me. I care a lot about things. If we apply this to parenting with these worksheets, you don't have to apply this to parenting, but say you were to apply it to the parenting, I get really frustrated when I feel like someone is questioning my parenting abilities, because I want to be a good parent and I want to support my child, and I feel like my approach is not recognized or validated, right? Like there are layers here about what's important to us and why. And then we can start noticing like, okay, whenever that deeper layer, whenever I feel that and that's happening, wow, I have this reaction, I have this emotional reaction, and it impacts how I might respond to a person. Right, so there's some pieces here that you can go through as many times as you like to sort of start getting a feel for this. Okay, and then I have this idea of a 7-day awareness and reframe challenge. There's an actual sheet, but there's these are cards that will be on paper, and there are a bunch of different prompts. The idea here is to try, so much of building any skill, even emotional awareness, is practicing that skill pretty repeatedly. And even though right here we're not, with this one, we are talking a little bit about a reframe, but the goal is really build emotional awareness by practicing awareness of your own emotions and mental health for 7 days. The reframes on here are a lot about like, as parents, we tend not to give ourselves necessarily like as much credit for things. We probably let our stress carry into other elements of our life and our own well-being. So the goal here is you're going to have prompts that you will, you pull one prompt a day and you're just going to like answer that prompt, but it's going to force you to practice that awareness and practice a little bit of a reframe. So these ideas of like something I'm doing well, but haven't been giving myself credit for. Okay, like just quick little answer there. An unrealistic and unfair expectation I tend to hold myself to, and I feel guilty when I don't, is whatever that is. A really meaningful moment between myself and my child recently, things like that. So there will be a bunch of these that you can pull from, just with the goal of practicing in these different ways. And then the last thing I'm showing you, some of you might already have this. This is the heartbeat skill pack. So this is the kid version of all of those foundational pieces of understanding your heart rate and your emotions. The game here, this heart cake tower game that's in the red on the right, is a little bit of playing around with getting your heart rate up and down to help kids build that awareness. Ideally, you do this with your child as well. But on this, because what we talked about so far really was just about awareness and not so much about coping, like not the next step of like, okay, great, I know all this, now what do I do? This is a little bit of that. So sort of understanding like, okay, how can I influence my heart rate in different ways? And with this game, you're building a tower, and the prompts on each card that you pull have you either get your heart rate up or down. The next iteration, so I'm very curious how folks use these activities, if you enjoy them, the next iteration will take us into another space with them. But that, so I will share all these out afterwards, and I am really curious how they go and whether or not they are helpful, and any requests also that you have, if there is a specific topic, or, you know, I am looking for tools on how to help my child or myself with X, Y, and Z. I would love to know, because yeah, it just helps us with our future content creation and just making sure we're truly building out resources that are helpful for parents and that you are also interested in for yourself and for your child. And that's it. That's all I have for today. A kind of a shorter presentation. I will stay on for questions for a little bit. I'm going to stop the recording. But if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. And I'll see you next time.